Hi everyone, I'm Kai, and I'm trying out a new format today. Let's talk about Star Wars. Star Wars has never really been my cup of tea. It's not that there's anything wrong with Star Wars. It's not even that it's bad. It's just been a combination of factors that has not made it appeal to me. I've been surrounded by people who love Star Wars. I've been exposed to a lot of people saying good things about it, and I've just never really been able to relate. For me, Star Wars was just this campy action film that I couldn't really find any way to become invested in the characters, and ultimately, I just couldn't become invested in. And then I saw The Last Jedi, and that flipped everything on its head. A lot of things that I thought I understood about Star Wars that I didn't like, I realized I'd kind of been looking at them the wrong way. And a lot of things that I previously hadn't noticed suddenly became completely clear to me. And I love so much about this fandom now. I now want to talk about it. I guess I'll start with The Force Awakens. The first time I saw The Force Awakens, I was not in the greatest mental state. I was grieving. I was basically at a point in my life where I couldn't be at home in the evenings. So I would go to the movie theater in California where they have those huge reclining chairs. And I would just buy a random movie ticket and I would sit in my nice reclining chair. I would curl up and sometimes I would go to sleep. Sometimes I would just stare at the screen for 2 or 3 hours. Sometimes I would then go back and buy another ticket if I needed more time because being at home was not relaxing. The most I could say about The Force Awakens was it didn't put me to sleep. I liked Finn, I liked Poe, and that was about it. I didn't feel invested in Rey, I didn't feel invested in Kylo. I thought Kylo's tantrums were quite silly, actually. And then I found Jenny Nicholson's videos where she talks about Kylo and all of the emotional beats that Kylo goes through. I specifically remember the moment when I saw her video about um, how Kylo is just crying and beating him and hitting himself and bleeding everywhere. And she says, "Yeah, this looks like a person who is happy with the direction his life has taken," sarcastically. And the moment that she said that, even though it's such an obvious thing, the moment she said that, I realized, yeah, why have I been taking him so seriously and acting like he's evil? Yeah, that seems right. He does seem like a person who's made terrible mistakes, but I was thinking of him as Baby Vader. I was so stuck in this rut of A New Hope and The Force Awakens are basically just the same movie and just retold over time with a more diverse cast. And I was so stuck in this rut that I didn't notice that, yeah, Kylo is not Darth Vader. Kylo is very, very much walking a different path than Darth Vader. And then when I saw The Last Jedi, so right from the moment that Rose's sister dies, that scene in and of itself was so powerful. That scene had me almost crying. And it's just at the beginning of the movie. And this is a character we'd never seen before. I had never been so invested in any character in Star Wars, much in even any other movie. I've never been that invested in just a one scene character. Maybe I have. I just can't remember it. And that solidified it for me. This movie is going to be different. And it was. I loved Luke. I never really cared about Luke in the original trilogy. I found him boring and not very interesting. This Luke, I loved. This Luke just spoke to me. The failures that he's gone through, The fact that he made Kylo Ren, the fact that he lied to Rey by omission about it, the fact that even though he never admitted to it until Rey forced him to, it clearly has sat with him. It clearly has been eating away at him. And this regret is so palpable. And at the end, he overcomes it and he uses it both to apologize to Kylo and also to help everyone escape Kylo. The fact that he reaches that point of being able to simultaneously go, yes, this was my nephew and I failed him and I love him, or I loved him, but also he's not a good person and I need to help everyone get away. That was, to me, it just, I love Luke. And I think it will significantly change the way that I view Luke now when I see the original trilogy. I loved Rose and Finn's back and forths. Just the fact that they're never on the same page. They're just always just a little bit on a different, speaking on a different level, and it's just, I love those dialogues. They're just so much fun. Kylo and Rey, they just sealed the deal for me because these were two characters that I had not become invested in The Force Awakens. And this was a movie that took me from basically not caring about either of these people to adoring them both, especially Kylo. As you might have been able to glean from my reaction to Luke, I love flawed characters. I love portrayals of flawed human people who make terrible mistakes but then are able to crawl their way back. And Kylo's journey is exactly what I wanted. The fact that he has never really actively attacked Rey had never occurred to me before. I never noticed. I hadn't quite picked up on. I was that's weird. Where did this come from? And then I rewatched The Force Awakens and realized it's pretty much always Rey attacking him. I'm not entirely sure what made him go after her in that forest in the first place, but from that point on, it's pretty much always Rey attacking him, and he goes out of his way to be kind to her and not hurt her, which is astonishing and says a lot about him. I'm not entirely sure what yet. I guess we'll find out in the last movie. But maybe he's in love with her, maybe he just feels this weird connection with her. I don't know. Either way, it's interesting because he's not just a villain. He's not just this person burning everything in his path. He is a victim of his parents' abandonment, as he seems to perceive it. He's a victim of Luke's distrust. And he still, for some reason, feels this connection to this random girl and wants her to rule the galaxy with him in a weird, awful way that he decides to express it. You're nothing, but not to me. Yeah, good going there. That's appealing. Um, and Rey. Rey was fascinating to me in this because she's also not just that hero. She's not just that person trying to do the right thing. Yes, she's starry-eyed and kind of romanticizes Luke and romanticizes the Force and romanticizes how Luke turned Vader. But then when Kylo presents her with facts that contradict what Luke told her, she goes in one scene from "you're a monster" to going down to the hole that represents the dark side and looking in the mirror without fear, and then straight to Kylo to confide in him and exchange with him assurances that they're not alone, and then promptly deliver herself to him, gift wrapped and everything. It's interesting, it's fascinating, and these characters and their relationship are so much more nuanced than I had initially seen. And this makes me love it. This, I love the theme of the movie as a whole. I love the theme of failure. I love the theme of failure is what we learn the most from. Failure is necessary, and failure is the greatest teacher. And we shouldn't be ashamed of our failure and hide away from the things that we've done wrong. We should confront them, and we should not make those same mistakes again. And that theme, that message, is just the most beautiful thing to me. I love this movie. And it also has made me realize that a lot of the way that I viewed the original trilogy, especially initially, was wrong because I used to see it as the story of Luke and Leia and Han. And when people said, oh, it's Darth Vader's story, I was just sort of like, yeah, I guess so. Okay. But it never really occurred to me that that really is what this is. It's really about the family. It's really about Luke coming to terms with who he is and where he comes from. That it's really about Vader learning to turn things around and learning to that it's not too late to save his son. There's still love there, even though everything has gone terribly, terribly, terribly south. He can still turn. And yeah, there is a wrong and right thing, which is, it's simplistic and it's not quite my cup of tea usually, but in this case, it's presented me with enough nuance and enough shades of gray, especially in the relationship between Kylo and Rey, that yeah, I mostly just see the gray now. I don't care that the premise is black and white anymore. So yeah, Kylo not turning. So Kylo not turning, but still having that moment where he and Rey still have that force bond and still look at each other across the distance. And you see on his face that he's so lonely and so sad, and he just looks at her like a puppy, and she closes the door on him. It's just right up my alley. This is the sort of story that I love, and this is exact the family drama, the themes, the cinematography, just up and down, everything that I love, and I just never noticed before. And yeah, there are flaws. I'm sure that I will go back and rewatch the original trilogy and I will still have problems with it. I already know that when I rewatch The Force Awakens, I still have some problems with it. I adore The Last Jedi, but even through my adoration, I can see that it's not perfect. No movie is. There's no such thing as perfection. But I love it all the same. And that's what matters. And so that's the story of my conversion from a person who was apathetic to Star Wars into a Star Wars fan. I hope that adds something to somebody's life if anybody watches this. So, thanks for watching. Bye. My roommate presented me with, from her old apartment, 3 postcards of Rey and Finn and Poe. And my immediate reaction was, we have to get Kylo. So now we have Kylo.